Okay, welcome. It's Friday evening, Detroit in black and white. We've got a light crew this evening. We're missing Adolph Mongo and Vanessa Moss, but Jim and I will try to hold down the fort and entertain. It's a big night in Detroit for sports. We've got right now the University of Michigan basketball game in March Madness. We've got Michigan State later tonight. We've got the Tigers at 9:45, and I'm not sure about the Red Wings if they're playing tonight. But anyways, there's a lot of sports happening out there. So we're going to deflect from sports and talk about some other issues. So, Jim, you wanted to talk about Robert Mueller, who was 81, passed away, former director of the FBI for 12 years. Shoot.
Hey, Janet. Hello, Queen Bee. Good to see you. So Robert Mueller died on March 20th, and I wanted just that the folks out there to know a little bit about Robert Mueller, because in the headlines, they just say he was the FBI director. Of course, he was the FBI director. That's a 10-year job. He was extended by 2 years, so it's unheard of. But Robert Mueller graduated from Princeton and NYU, New York University. In the 60s, after he graduated from college, he volunteered. A friend of his was killed in Vietnam, and he felt compelled to join the Marines. So he joined the Marines. He won the Bronze Star and a Purple Heart. Came back from Vietnam. He ran a rifle company, and he rescued a fellow Marine that was behind the line and saved his life, right? He went to the University of Virginia Law School. And in 2001, he was appointed just before 9/11 to the director of the FBI. And again, he was confirmed by a 98-0 vote. Everybody in the Senate voted for Robert Mueller. In 2017, he was also a U.S. attorney, assistant U.S. attorney, assistant attorney general. And in 2017, he was a special counsel for the Russian interference investigation, which is when it kind of turned on him, right? It's when some people started to hate him and some people started to love him, and the people that loved him before began hating him. But what I think is really fascinating about Robert Mueller, in 2004, as an attorney, he's a constitutionalist. He believed in the Constitution. So Ashcroft, Comey, and Mueller raised concerns after 9/11 during the terrorist surveillance program. And what they did is they went to the administration, or Ashcroft was attorney general, said we're not going to surveil U.S. citizens. It's against the Constitution. So they went and they had a meeting with the president, who was George W. Bush at the time. He also, and they resolved it to the best of their ability, right? He also was against enhanced interrogations. He would not let his FBI people work with the CIA when they say enhanced interrogations. What I think they're talking about is waterboarding.
Torture, they're talking about.
Suspects. And here Robert Mueller stood up and said, hey, I'm the head of the FBI. We're not going to do it. So to me, Robert Mueller, whether you agree with him or not, and Alan met him, and he's going to get an opportunity to talk about him. I guess I met him. He handed me my diploma at the FBI National Academy. Didn't really talk to him. I was just in passing.
Was that in Quantico?
It was. Yeah. 10 weeks at Quantico I spent there. But here's where it gets tricky, and this is where I want to lead the conversation. The current president said, good, I'm glad he's dead. So I think Robert Mueller deserves, and I don't know where he was buried at. I searched today. They said he may be buried somewhere in New York City, but he certainly should be considered for Arlington National Cemetery. He is a hero. He's a U.S. hero, and he is.
He's military. He's a veteran.
A military hero. 50. This is a guy that, if you know Robert Mueller, he didn't come from the suburbs. He came from Princeton, New York University, and University of Virginia Law School. He was not a lightweight, right? And he spent the majority of his time working for the United States government. And the current president came out and basically said, I'm glad he's dead. And I think that's tragic that a patriot, whether you agree with them or not, should be treated that way. So go ahead.
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's classless. I certainly understand. I mean, we might have somebody that we know, a public figure, somebody who dies, and we may not like that person. And privately, we may say, what Trump did publicly. But as the president of the United States, as you say, for somebody who served this country in all different forms, he was in the Attorney General's office. He was the U.S. Attorney in San Francisco. He did a lot for this country. And it's interesting. I met him at an FBI party. I think it was 2009 at headquarters there. And he was very gracious. But, he came in at a really tricky time. He came in I think maybe it was September 4th of 2001. And then there was suddenly the 9/11 attacks. And so he was tasked with sort of retooling the whole FBI, taking people from the violent crime squad, from the white collar squads, and putting them in terrorism and counterterrorism squads. And they had too many agents. They weren't up on how to deal with terrorism. They didn't understand the Middle East. They didn't understand the politics of the Middle East. They were learning in the beginning. They were surveilling and approaching a tourist who would come to Washington, D.C. and start filming the Capitol. They were suspect of possibly, terrorism. So they didn't understand. They were overwhelmed. And some agents were really pissed at them because they were working violent crimes and they were working public corruption, and they were pulled off there to do stuff. And sometimes they felt it was a waste of time. So there were some agents who were very angry, but there's a lot who adored him. And I did talk to one FBI official once who told me, he said, he was a very serious guy. He was a no-nonsense guy, very stoic. And I had an agent tell me, he says, when I would go in to brief Bob Mueller, I would walk in nervous and I would leave nervous. He said, with Jim Comey, I walk in nervous and I'd walk out relaxed. And so Mueller was a tough guy. And then when he was appointed to the consul to investigate the whole Russia thing, that became very political. And he tried his best not to get involved in the politics, but they indicted a lot of people there, and people were mad at him about that. And then there were other people, when he went to testify before Congress about the report, he didn't want to commit and say, he basically said in the report that Trump was involved in obstruction of justice. When he was asked at the committee, he wouldn't really commit to that. And I think some people were mad, saying, man up, speak up about it. And he wanted to be a Boy Scout. He wanted to be right down the middle. He wanted to be as professional as possible. And, he did his best. And so, for Trump, I can understand how Trump would say, I'm glad he's dead, but you keep that to yourself. That's just a classless thing. We may not like people in our lives, but we're not going to go on Facebook and say, oh, I'm so glad so-and-so died. Thank God, he was a prick. He was a piece of shit. It's just bothersome. So,
and I think it's important that we recognize what he said in his statement was like, if I found evidence to prove that the president did not commit a crime, he would have reported it. And I think that's the statement that really ticked off the people that he was investigating. He's basically saying, he didn't come out and say, hey, Trump committed a crime, but he did say that if he knew overwhelmingly that he did not, that he would tell you. So he didn't have friends on either side. He was losing because the right was accusing him of, making Trump responsible for committing a crime. And the left was mad because he wouldn't come out and say Trump committed a crime. But I think he believed that the president, you could not indict a sitting president. And he stuck to what he thought was the Constitution.
Right. He tried to be that.
He was an honorable man, Mr. Mueller. Good evening to Mary Kemet. Duela. Hello, Duela. Thank you, Janet, for sharing. Go ahead.
No, but he was a serious guy. I saw him, like I said, I met him once, and then I covered some speaking engagements that he had, one in Denver, in 2008, where he attended the International Chiefs of Police Conference, which I don't know if you've ever gone to those, but there's thousands of police from really around the world, but a lot from the United States, and the FBI sends all its top people from every office in the U.S. Same thing, DEA, ATF, and then there's just police chiefs from all around. And he spoke there, and I watched and I covered a speech where he was speaking where the Baltimore division was opening up a new office, and he spoke there, and he tried to put a little humor into his speeches, but it was kind of dry humor. But yeah, he was followed by Jim Comey, who initially was beloved in the Bureau, and then I think some agents felt he was a little too political. I mean, one, I was in D.C. at the Post when when they were investigating Hillary Clinton for her emails, the use of her private emails to send sensitive information across. And I knew agents who were telling me they thought she was going to get indicted. Well, she didn't, which, as generally, as somebody who's covered for decades, if you don't indict somebody, you can't go out and then give a whole press conference saying basically that you think they're guilty,
right?
And so that wasn't good. And then agents who I knew who were really admirers of him were angry at him that he became more and more political. As he was fired, and then he became even more political and stuff, which I can totally understand that. I mean, it got out of control. The FBI appointments are supposed to be for 10 years so that they cross lines, often, Republican, Democrat. And so Comey only lasted, I can't remember, it wasn't very long. He was fired, and then they brought in Christopher Wray, who was there for the Biden administration. And then he left right before Trump came in again, because he knew he was going to get fired. Then his deputy left the day of. His deputy was the interim for maybe a day, and he left. And then they brought in Kash Patel, who should never have been appointed to that position. He's not competent to be in that position that he's in.
And that's why we don't have a national police department. So yeah, that's one of the reasons that the FBI, the DEA, these positions should not be political, and that's why the FBI appointment was for 10 years. Hello, Miss Sheila. Hello, Marlon. Hi, Karen.
So I don't.
Tracy. Hello, Tracy. Loftus Salon.
On a lighter note, you and I were talking right before we started. Buddy's Pizza, which some of us have grown. I mean, the original one on 6th and Conant in Detroit. And they were sold. They announced that they were sold by 3 local investors here in Detroit who bought it from an investment firm, Capital Spring, like a venture capital fund or something. And so I was saying, I first went to Buddy's Pizza in Detroit. I was like 16 years old. I was working at a summer camp, and we had a break where the kids went home, so you have a couple of days off. And a group of us went to Buddy's Pizza. It was the first time I'd been there, and I was so in awe of that pizza. I was a fan for life, and I still like Buddy's Pizza. But I think when the Jacobs family, which bought Buddy's Pizza in 1972, sold to this Capital Spring investment company, their goal was to expand beyond southeastern Michigan. But I think the pizza you could tell they were cutting corners on the pizza, and it was good, but not as good. And at the same time, there is a lot of competition for square pizzas in Detroit now. I mean, you go to Grandma Bob's in Corktown, you go to Michigan and Trumbull in Corktown, you go to Como's in Ferndale. You can get some really legitimate
Louise in Hazel Park.
Louise, which is really still, I think, still keeps the quality there. So I'm curious if people have been fans or were fans of Buddy's. Like I say, you were talking to you had an opinion about Buddy's.
Well, my position with Buddies, and I enjoy Buddies. You know, there's one right down the street here in Woodhaven. When I was growing up, we heard about Buddies, but Buddies was an East Side institution, right? People from this side of town never really were familiar with Buddies. But I always say this: if you don't eat your Buddies fast, it gets cold in a hurry. And I think it's because it's the thickness, the dough, and the tomato sauce. It's good in the beginning, but we are certainly a pizza town, right? If you look at it, Domino's, Hungry Howie's, started in Taylor, Little Caesars. Pizza is what we do well here. So
I'm amazed at, if you look at how many pizza places we have, and they're all still in business. I mean, you have Domino's and Little Caesars, which I think Little Caesars, to me, any pizza's good, but Little Caesars is on the low end of really quality pizza. But there are so many pizzerias. We're just talking about, we're not talking like Moots downtown, which is a fantastic pizza place, but
Supino's excellent. Supino's is pretty good.
Right, Supino's is awesome. And then you have Domino's, you have Little Caesars, you have Hungry Howie's, you have Jets, and those are the chains, and they're everywhere. And then you have all these other pizzerias, and Detroit is really, I have to say, pizza is probably one of my favorite foods. But I'm just amazed how many pizzerias, and I think Detroit may have per capita maybe the most pizzerias anywhere.
A lot of success stories, Domino's and Little Caesars and Hungry Howie's. And I guess Buddies was going nationwide is what the story was. Yeah. Palazzo di Pizza is by far the best. Thank you, Justin. I'm not familiar. Jets is overpriced, is not as good as it used to be. Queen Bee, I agree with that, Queen Bee. It's kind of turned into the Buddies. Kind of turned into traditional. Papa Romano's is a good pizza company. Good evening, Derek Henry. Good to see you. We agree, Queen Bee. Tamari, the FBI has been the enemy of black people pretty much. COINTELPRO, I should say. Thank you, Alan. I know when you're right. Miss Sheila is giving you props there, and it's good to see you, Miss Sheila. Should we take a break, Alan?
That would be a good idea, and then I'd finish up with a little more pizza talk.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabree, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
All right, we are back. It's Friday night. We got, I think it's halftime, the Michigan-Alabama game. I think Alabama's up by 2. But anyways, so, I've always said this. I could not understand why, people always talk about Chicago pizza, and there's somebody commenting, G-Money said, I was a huge fan of Buddies in the mid-'70s at the original location. However, the quality has fallen off quite a bit since they have expanded. However, the more chains, the more the quality goes down. I happen to agree with that. I was going to say, I didn't understand it because there's Chicago pizza, there's New York pizza, which Supino's is really more a New York / Italian slice. But I didn't understand why Detroit pizza was not catching on. And now you go anywhere. You go to Brooklyn. You go to Chicago. You go to Vietnam. Danny Fenster, who was a journalist who was captured in Myanmar for a while, he was in Vietnam for a while, and he sent me pictures of square pizza, and they had on one of the walls, this is a Vietnamese pizza shop, they had the history of Buddy's Pizza on the wall.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, Detroit has finally gotten its props. And I have to say, Buddy's does not have, it used to be Buddy's and Shields. And then eventually Louis were sort of the the places to get square pizza. But
Cloverleaf too, East Side Cloverleaf, right?
yeah, Cloverleaf. And now there are just so many good square pizzas that are some that are better than Buddy's. And it's like I root for Buddy's to make it. I mean, they're downtown, right near Comerica Park. They've got the other location in Detroit on Conant, the original one, which I think is still such a classic. And then they're all over. But here's Queen Bee says, and like the rest of them, Shields is a hit or miss. And I agree with that. There's a Shields right across from the art museum. And there's times where I've had, I get the vegetarian pizza well done, so the edges are real crisp and stuff. And it's been great. And then I bragged about it to some friends, and then we went and it wasn't as good. And so I don't know. I think restaurants, I think that's what the hamburger chains have going for them, is some consistency most of the time.
And Miss Sheila loves Cloverleaf, and Cloverleaf's sometimes hit or miss too. And Pizza Populous, Queen Bee, they put one out here in Taylor, probably, it's probably 20 minutes from here, but it's just not very good. People used to fight to get into Pizza Populous when it was in Greektown, right? Everybody won't want to go to Greektown and go to Pizza Populous, and then they start putting them around town, and
right,
people lost interest.
Right. Well, they were the intro to Chicago style pizza. And I remember going and I liked it. And then it just seemed to, but we see a lot of things like in Greektown, some of the restaurants have kind of, a lot of them have gone out of business, but some of them are not as good as they used to be. And it's too bad because it's a treat for people, particularly now. Going out to a restaurant is so expensive. I think less and less, people are just not going out as much. I mean, the really expensive places people have money are going out regardless. But for the average person to just go to like a good restaurant, not necessarily fancy, I think people are pulling back. And particularly if you get a drink, it's outrageous.
Well, thank you for joining Alan and me on the Food Channel tonight. I appreciate it. My latest is, and I told you, Dave's Hot Chicken, but that's a fast food place that started in a parking lot, I think, in one of Los Angeles football stadiums or whatever. Now they're all over the country. And then they get acquired by a bigger company who gets acquired by, it's like real estate, right? Fast food is like real estate.
It's like everything, it's like the hospital systems we see. Like they're franchising, they're growing. One hospital's gobbling up the other, and they consolidate and cut services, and the CEOs of these get bigger salaries, and the quality goes down. And we see the same thing with we unfortunately saw it with Buddy's, where this investment firm bought it and did some expanding, and I think they ended up, they were out in Grand Rapids and I think Lansing. I think they weren't that successful because what we grew up on with Buddy's Pizza back in the 70s is not the same pizza that they're peddling now,
right,
and stuff. So
it's pre-made. It's not like they're putting it to, a lot of it's pre-made. Dwayla, Papa John's. There's not a Papa John's anywhere near here. I don't know if there's any around in Detroit or on the east side. So what do you guys want to talk about out there? Tamari said Eric Sabree should grant a foreclosure moratorium. A University of Chicago study found Detroit is illegally overassessed 80% of the lowest valued homes consistently for each year since 2012. And we talked a little bit about that and how people are getting thrown out of their houses for not paying the taxes. It's ridiculous. Where's the help, right? So what are they doing at the treasurer's office? Maybe we can get Eric Sabree on to talk about it. Dorian points out everything is a commodity, and that's right. It was special to go to Greektown. That's exactly right, Miss Sheila, for Pizza Populous. People would go there at 10 o'clock at night and have a few drinks, beer, whatever, before the casinos. When Greektown, when you could get something else, Savaki or whatever you like. Savaki, is that how you say it? Savaki.
Yeah. It's interesting. And again, Greektown again, some of the restaurants went out of business. What happened was that some of the restaurants that were, the owners were great. They made great. Lycon was my favorite place. They had the family. The
Right.
father was running it, and their food, I think, was the best. And I mean, I've been to Greece, and their food was the real deal. But the kids, didn't want, the father wanted to retire. The kids didn't want to take over. And that's what started happening with all these Greek restaurants. These kids grew up in the restaurant culture where they were working all the time, and their father was working, their mother was working. And so I think when it came time, it's exhausting running restaurants. It's a very intense thing. And I think a lot of the kids were like, screw this. We're not going to, they went to law school or whatever, and they decided they didn't want to do it. And ended up, Greektown is now, it'd be interesting. I haven't been there in a long, long time because I think they're redoing the whole Greektown so that it's just a pedestrian walk now, so that you can't drive through Greektown. And so we'll see if that helps at all. I mean, Greektown has had its ups and downs. There were some gang problems for a while. The business has gone up and down. In the 80s, the suburbanites discovered Greektown, and even in the winter, there were long lines to get in these restaurants, and then that faded. So it's gone through a lot of different, lives. So another thing I want to talk about real briefly is that I don't know if anyone's following this, but the city of Hamtramck, these two fellows here, the one on the left lost the election, and the one on the right is the mayor. And what happened was the man on the right won by 11 votes. This was in November's election, won by 11 votes. A couple days later, the city clerk found 37 mailed-in votes that were never counted. And so they'd been sitting there in a room, and people had been coming in and out, so there was some concern that they weren't protected, that somebody could conceivably have slipped an extra vote in or whatever. So the issue went before the Wayne County Board of Canvassers, who said, no, those aren't going to be allowed to be counted. So the mayor, then the Wayne County Circuit Judge upheld that ruling. So the mayor won by 11 votes. So now what we have here is, and his name is Adam Al-Harbi. Now the Court of Appeals, the Michigan Court of Appeals, has issued an opinion saying those votes should have been counted. They're sending the issue back to the original judge who ruled on that to say, here's what we see as the case. The judge, I think, will have ultimately, and who knows, maybe it'll be appealed after that. But so there could be a recount, or at least those 37 votes. And it's possible after 3 months, the current mayor could be booted out of office. So
you're talking about mail-in ballots, right?
Mail-in ballots. So we're sitting there in the clerk's office, and apparently,
Well, you would think that there was a remedy, and I'd like to know what our friends out there think. You signed your name when you send a mail-in ballot, right? Why can't they return those 37 votes to those people and let them re-vote? There has to be a remedy, and I think these votes need to be counted. I think it'd be a miscarriage of justice. These people have a right to their vote.
Well, the Court of Appeals, that's in a 2-to-1 vote, one person dissented. They said it should be counted. Now the judge and the Wayne County Board of Canvassers said basically the integrity of the ballots could have been compromised because people were coming in and out of the room. Not likely anybody would be.
But are they still sealed? Are they still sealed? Or are they?
You know what? I can't remember if they were open or sealed, but they weren't counted. They don't know what the votes are right now. And so, I mean, it's a shame because, I mean, in small cities like that, really, when you talk about 11 vote difference, obviously every vote counts.
And you don't know. The winner might have got 20 out of 25 out of 37, but you'll never know unless you count them.
Right. And so
Mary says the foreclosure deadline is March 31st. The clerk should be recalled. Queen Bee, I'm still waiting on Mike Cox, Miss Sheila, to return my call about deed fraud. That's disappointing, but not surprising.
The clerk's been fired, by the way, in Hamtramck.
Oh, so
she was fired, but not for that reason. For something she was mocking one of I think the council members or something. She had some like a punching bag with his face on it, and they got mad. But I attended some of those meetings before, and they're very contentious. It's one of there's certain communities where the city council is just like always people yelling and protesting and stuff like that. And Hamtramck is sometimes just that. And Hamtramck is such a mix now. I mean, it was predominantly Polish. Now it's just slightly majority Muslim, and primarily Yemeni and Bangladeshi are the two main groups, but there's Syrians and other groups as well. And then there's young hipsters, and then there's the LGBTQ community there. It's a very mixed thing, and there's a lot of cultures kind of clashing at times, trying to figure out how to get along. So.
And G Money remembers when Stroh's was top shelf.
I remember, yeah, Stroh's.
But over the years, it became, it didn't taste so well. And he also mentioned McDonald's. Yeah, that was billions and billions sold ago, I think. G Money.
McDonald's. Here was McDonald's down. I mean, they're still in business, and obviously they're doing great around the world. But I remember right when I graduated college, I would go all the time to get a Big Mac fry, and I think probably a Diet Coke, and it was hot, and it was just like I could eat those every day. And then they started a thing where they wanted quicker service, so they started making the burgers ahead of time, and they put them in these heat drawers, these plastic little drawers that kept them warm. And so sometimes it was kind of mushy. The last time I've had a Big Mac, I was in DC. I was waiting for a bus in Adams Morgan, which is like a lot of bars and stuff. It was a Friday night. I'd been drinking with some friends, and I'm standing there, and I go, God, I haven't had a Big Mac in 5 years. I'm going in, getting a Big Mac. And I got a Big Mac, and it was just tepid. It was just warm. It wasn't really hot. And I thought, what a waste of calories. I just thought it was shitty. And I don't think I've had a Big Mac since. So that's
Queen Bee says Macomb County definitely gets it right with regard to deed fraud, and this talk from politicians about deed fraud in Wayne County, particularly Detroit, is performative. I think how do you get fired from an elected job as a city clerk, Miss Sheila, or in this case would be a city clerk, which is interesting. I think that somewhere downriver in the last election, maybe the last presidential election, they found a bag of ballots. Do you guys remember this? Do you remember this, Alan? Does any of our viewers remember this? I think it was Ecorse. I'm not positive. I don't want to badmouth the community, but these things happen when we talk about election fraud. I think there's a huge difference with someone trying to, and I don't see it. I mean, I don't believe it. I worked with a city clerk in the community I worked in. What ambition would they have to try and change an election? I think it's incompetence typically that leads to these kind of errors.
Well, we saw in Atrium County, which is up north near Traverse City, where there was, and it must have been in the 2020 election, where there was a glitch in the computer, and it had Joe Biden winning up there, and it's a heavy Republican. And so they fixed the computer, they fixed the votes, and the clerk was a Republican who voted for Trump. So it wasn't like there was some kind of glitch there. And so our system is imperfect,
Correct.
But we had, I think in this last election, the presidential election, we had 15 foreign, immigrants who were not citizens, which means they're not allowed to vote, and they voted, but they were caught. They were caught, and I think we've caught most of the people. And so now they want to have it where you have to prove your citizenship. So, they have a proposal where Trump wants people to prove their citizenship, which means a lot of people aren't going to vote. I had to, back in 2016, I was on retainer well, I was doing Deadline Detroit, but I was on retainer with ABC News and the investigative unit out in New York. I was working from back here. Disney, which is the corporate company, they made me get a birth certificate so that I could be employed by them. And I had to, find out how to do it, first of all. And then it took me, I can't remember how long it took for them to mail me a birth certificate. But how many people are going to do that? I mean, how many people have a birth certificate laying around? I mean, I have my passport, which you need your birth certificate, and then I have an enhanced license. So but people who don't, I mean, most people don't have their birth certificate. I mean, you've moved, whatever it is, how many times you might have moved in your life, and it gets lost in the shuffle. And maybe when you clean out your closet after 20 years, there it is. But I don't know. I don't know how people feel about that, but I think it's a way of voter suppression. I mean, certainly I don't have any problem with showing an ID, but there should be, I mean, if they really want to do that, there should be a computerized system which has Jim Nardoni, U.S. citizen, and they just take all the votes, everyone who's voted, and they run it through the computer system, and it'll pick up anyone who voted that's not a citizen.
There's ways to verify. And to Mary's kid, and she said Trump might hear you election fraud. Well, he wasn't complaining about election fraud in 2024 or 2016. He was only complaining about it when he lost. So it's interesting how people talk about election fraud in a campaign that they lose. They don't talk about it in a campaign that they win. I hope Oakland County gets it right. Miss Sheila talking about deed fraud. eCourse is full of corruption. Queen Bee, yes, I'm familiar with eCourse. Shame, it was a good community at one time. It disappoints me what happened to eCourse. You can get your birth certificate the same day in Detroit. Tamari said. Is that building still there? Right? Where's that, on Claremont? Where is that building?
You know what? I'm trying to remember. I may be wrong about how I got north, because I somehow maybe I went over to what was the old hospital on?
Yeah, Herman Kiefer, was it?
Herman Kiefer. I think they had
north of the new center there.
Right. And I can't remember if I went. Somehow, maybe I did go there to get a copy of it. But it's an effort, and like I say, I mean, we all have to get a driver's license if we want to drive legally. That is, and so there should be some process of checking the voter rolls for citizenship.
Well, that's a great point, Alan. I don't know if you've heard that in the state Senate, somebody's promoting a bill or introduced a bill. Maybe we should take a break and we can talk about the bill of forcing elderly drivers. Did you see this? To
have eye tests.
We should see what our viewers think about that. Maybe we should take a break first.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Okay, we are back. It is Friday evening here. Go ahead, Jim. You were talking about.
I have a little uneasiness about this proposal. I think it's a state senator that makes you every 5 years after you're 75 go back for a driving test and an eye test, et cetera, when you're 85 every year. First of all, the question is who's going to pay for it? And secondly, maybe it's, the kids that are 18 to 22 to 27 are the ones that need to be returning to have a driving test. So I understand there needs to be an age, but I'm not sure there aren't some people out there that are 75 that really don't need an eye exam and a driver's test. So I don't know how I feel about that. How do you feel about that, Alan? How do our viewers feel about that?
It's interesting. I think at some age, some people probably shouldn't be. My father drove till he was 91, and he really just decided he didn't want to drive anymore. So it wasn't like, give us the keys. But but I don't know. It's in one level it seems discriminatory. On the other level, it seems common sense that as you get older at a certain age, maybe there may be more physical challenges there. So I have mixed feelings. In some ways, I feel like, it's the safety of everyone on the road. If somebody's on the road that really is, some people don't want to give up that freedom of driving. I'm hoping we have autonomous cars soon. We're seeing Waymo in the city of Detroit, where they're driverless cars, but for now they're just mapping out the city, so they're driving with somebody in the car. But I was in Phoenix in February, and there was a Waymo car driving right next. I was with some friends right next to us and made a left-hand turn and switched lanes and everything. And it's just crazy to see. And who knows, maybe they're safer than having real drivers in there. But there have been some people, where the cars hit somebody, but we don't know. I'm not sure if it was, somebody could jump in front of a car as well. And Waymo's not going to be any better than the average driver, but.
And here's a little secret. Mr. 1213 says Michiganders have to look into the iMachine already when renewing our licenses. Thank you, Ms. Sheila. I'm right about something. I appreciate that. It's not very often. I turned my grandfather in. Queen Bee had an accident note, and I noticed a change in him. He was diagnosed with dementia. But Queen Bee knows that when you know someone who you think needs a driver's test, you can report them to the Secretary of State. In her particular incident with her grandfather, Queen Bee, there is a box on the accident report. You can ask and you can contact any police officer, can ask for a re-exam, and that should go with the family, and the police agencies should be doing these kind of things. So if a policeman stops somebody that's, 69 that might be suffering from dementia, or 59 for that kid. We have people sometimes they're 45 that suffer from dementia. Everything needs to be considered. I'm not saying that there isn't some kind of method that we can do to check people because we have to, but this is about one incident where somebody was in a crash, an elderly 90 something, and a woman got out to inspect the crash, and sadly, if I read it right, she crashed into the person that was outside of her car, and she passed. So, I mean, that's an unusual circumstance, but
right.
There's all kinds of people driving out there that shouldn't be driving. People on cell phones, people texting, people drinking, and people with a beer in one hand and a Colt 45 and a Glock 19 in the other hand. There's all kinds of examples.
There's DUIs all the time. Look, we got Tiger Woods, a famous person who just crashed. Was it a crash or was he? I can't remember.
I think it was a crash. I didn't see it. I just heard about it. I don't know.
He was arrested, and I think there's a law was it in Florida where it happened? I can't remember now, but there's a law, whatever state he was in, that if you're arrested for a DUI, you can't be released for 8 hours. So he was in jail sitting there.
Well, what it sounds like is he didn't submit to any kind of a chemical test. So therefore, the police agency becomes responsible for that person. So if he'd have blown into a breathalyzer and he'd have been at one point, Ms. Sheila, I don't know. We don't know. I didn't see it, but if he would have been an 04, which is 2 beers, he could have, even after the crash, if he would have taken a blood or alcohol, a breath or urine test, he could have driven away if he wasn't intoxicated. He chose to spend 8 hours in jail, right? So that kind of gives you an indication where he might be.
I've got a quote here. Somebody says, get your birth certificate at Wayne County Clerk's Office, 400 Monroe, which is there in Greektown. I have a question. If you were, what advice would you give everyone out there if you are stopped and you've been drinking and they suspect you've been drinking? What's the best advice in terms of do you submit to a breathalyzer? Do you refuse it, or what? And maybe you don't want to be telling everyone what to do.
So here's what happens when there's something called implied consent. So when you sign up for a driver's license, you agree to take a breath, blood, or urine test, at the request of a peace officer if they believe that you're intoxicated. So you've already given up that right by signing up for a driver's license. Some people will refuse all the tests, and some of them can still win in a courtroom and say, I didn't do it because this, that, or another thing. But it's really difficult to beat the implied consent suspension. So you might beat the drunk driving, but if you didn't take the test, you're going to face the consequences for that. So,
and what's more severe? Let's say you've got 0.15. You blow through the breathalyzer, you get and it's currently 0.08, I think is the legal limit. If you blow 0.15, or you say, I'm not taking a test.
So here's what's going to happen. So our viewers out there, if you refuse a test, they're just going to get a search warrant and take you to the hospital and draw blood. And I will tell you that blood tests usually come out a lot higher than breath tests, because blood tests are really accurate. So you lose on both sides, right? You lose the implied consent charge. And then if they get a search warrant, they have far more evidence than if you'd have just blown in the tube.
Teresa is not here tonight. She's out of town. And so we're just.
She is attending a funeral over in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, a place I've never been to. So
I'm familiar with Wilkes-Barre because they had some newspapers there, and they had a big newspaper strike there. So
that's
all the brethren in the business. So another thing. So I'm curious what, we're seeing war go on here, which I think I heard that J.D. Vance was yelling at Netanyahu, and this was told by Saeed Khan, who's a professor, was saying that he was yelling at Netanyahu, saying, you told us this would be a short war and all that stuff. And it's obviously, I thought it was going to be a 4-day war. I thought they'd go in, they'd bomb some of the military structure and get out, but it's gotten very complicated. Iran has turned it into an economic war, besides that they've been firing bombs back and stuff like that. But they've also been, I guess they were selling barrels of oil before the war at $67 a barrel. And now they're selling it at like $112 or something a barrel. So they're making more money from this war. And we can all see every day the gas pump. I mean, it's just paying these prices back in we were paying these prices back in 2008, but we got used to gasoline being under $3, and now we're seeing it constantly rise, and we don't know. When I was out in Santa Monica, California back in 2023, and nothing was going on, gas prices there were like $5.50 a gallon or something. So I'm curious, in the very beginning, we talked about, the first couple of days, Vanessa was saying, well, nobody really cares about that war. We care about our problems here. And I said, that war is coming here to us in one way or another. And we're seeing gas prices just go up and up. We're just not used to paying that right now at a time where also everything else is expensive. I mean, eggs finally came down, but eggs came down because the bird flu ended. There was a shortage of eggs for a while because of the bird flu, and they had to kill off a lot of, and so that's come down. But everything else, I go to the grocery store now, and it's just the prices are so. Even Meijer, I used to be able to get a lot more than at Meijer's than I would at Whole Foods, but I feel like not that much anymore.
I want to comment on that, but I want to read a couple of our comments first. A quarter of my business is the elderly. Dorian Denard, 5846. Their own kids won't take them to their doctor appointments. What the kids don't know, their parents and grandparents are writing them out. Good for them. If they're not going to take them to the doctor's appointment or ignoring them, then they should write them out of the will. Duela said, I heard he blew a .00 and refused to do a urine test, so he was taken to jail. Well, we all know that Tiger Woods has had some challenges with injuries and what would you call it, pain medications, which is an awful situation. Jan, my friend Jan, says he refused. Our friend Jan, I should say, refused a urine test, no alcohol involved. Urine would have probably That's the thing with the breathalyzer; it only gets the alcohol. A urine test would get the alcohol and any other kind of
Any drugs?
substance.
Uh-huh.
Yes, Miss Sheila, Teresa's not here. It's only the two of us, and you, and G Money, and Dorian, and Jan, all our other friends. To beat a drunk driving test, which is rare, it's going to cost you $20,000 with a Steve Fishman type of lawyer. Yeah, that's exactly right. You're going to pay either way, right, Dorian? You're going to pay on your driver's
At least a minimum of 10.
with
A
your
minimum of
insurance,
10 grand.
with Alan's friend Steve Fishman. He'll probably charge you a little money too. Who's protesting in the No Kings rally? Marlin. Anybody out there interested? I know Jill was participating. I think Jill was participating. I've seen Jill. Trump needs to be removed, tied to enact the 25th Amendment. 5,000 troops may lose their lives. OMG to Mary Kemet. Trump tricked us on his intentions. Ms. Sheila, I think there's some truth to that. Exactly. G Money, a recruit out in that neck of the woods. Somewhat of a rural and poor kind of area with a lot of uneducated people. It's not that far from the Poconos. Yeah, I've never been there, but my understanding, I worked with Teresa's dad. He was our city treasurer. Before I knew Teresa, I knew her dad. So he was a friend of mine. We served on the pension board together. So that's where he was born. I guess this was his youngest sister. She was 93 years old, so she just passed. And food is going to cost more. They're being delivered by trucks and diesel. That's exactly right, Tamari. Everything goes up. Fertilizer, everything. You know, I got something from REI today that I ordered for my upcoming trip, and it was delivered today. A guy in a little Ford sedan brought it. So I don't really get that. That can be painful to parents that took good care of their children. Absolutely, Miss Sheila. We need to stick together. I want to talk about the war for just a second, because NATO's position is, an attack on one is an attack on all, right? And I think the United States and you, Alan, our friends out there, tell me where I'm wrong. Everybody thought this was Israel and the United States against Iran. Well, it's not. Iran has China and Russia and Cuba, whoever they have, right? They have their own allies, and their own allies are some pretty powerful players when you get China and Russia. So why would we be surprised that they were getting support from some of these countries that buy their oil?
Yeah, well, Iran is, look, they're making more money. Iran is selling their oil to China for more money. They're making more money. And people sometimes forget how many bases we have in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar. We have, the central command there. So they're bombing those Arab countries because they're hosting the United States there. And look, the Prince of Saudi Arabia has told the U.S. and Israel, destroy Iran. They're enemies of, and Qatar is mad at Iran and stuff. So I just don't see, I think Trump was saying regime change, go ahead, people, take over the government, but it doesn't happen that way. They don't have, like Syria had militias, and it took them 10 years to overthrow Assad, but nobody's going to overthrow the Revolutionary Guard there. They got their weapons. They've killed, in just the last set of protests, the Iranians killed 3,500 of their own people in protests. So
3,500 or 35? I mean, I heard anywhere from 8,000 to 35,000.
Well, what it is there were 30 about, and I'm sure there's numbers.
Yeah, who knows? We don't know.
Well, it was 3,500 in this last set of protests. But since all these protests have happened, it's 30,000.
So we're led to believe it's somewhere in the many, many thousands of people.
Total in over the years, 30,000 people. But we saw Saddam Hussein. He killed 5,000 Kurds. We saw Assad in Syria, who supposedly has killed hundreds of thousands before he was finally overthrown. These guys can't stay in power without killing people because they're so unpopular. But they don't worry about, in Iran, probably only 20% of the people support the current regime with the with the Ayatollah and the Revolutionary Guard, but they don't care. They got the weapons. If you don't like it and you want to go out and protest, they're going to kill you eventually. So, you know, it's scary. It's a scary world. We forget how really scary it is. But in the end, you know what? It's too bad. We all grow up as kids in elementary school. We're taught, you know, on the playground, you better play together well and no fighting and stuff like that. How does that, you know, run amok where suddenly we have, you know, these leaders who are just willing to use all their weaponry to kill, you know, young people that we're sending to war? You don't see Trump's children aren't going to war, and he talks all tough and stuff like that, and they're shipping back some of these people in body bags and, you know, wrapped in American flags. You know, war is serious. And I was listening to a general on one of the cable stations who was just saying the way they're bragging about war. He says, I've never seen anything like that. You don't brag about killing people.
That's the War Department was something that was, to me, that was pretty ridiculous. Kenneth Powell. Thanks, Kenneth, for tuning in tonight. Thank you for your contribution. I was trying to look at your emojis. It looks like an eye. I can't get it. I can't see it. My eyes are old, and even my glasses, I can't see. It looks like eyes and ears, maybe headphones and one eye looking back at me. People go stomping in the streets at the No Kings rally that isn't moving shit, but only complain on Facebook about rising taxes and people getting killed right in their own community. Queen Bee. But we're gonna recognize the right of people to go out and protest for whatever they want to protest for. Marlon Holt says, but you make a great point, Queen Bee. You're absolutely right. Goodbye, UK. Yeah, what happened to the UK? Keep Kenneth, you make it tough on me. Can use I can't see him, Kenneth. And we don't have Teresa with us today, so keep forgetting. Can use the TV or computer while on. Yeah, there it is. Thanks, Kenneth. You got a puzzle for me there, but Miss Sheila, everybody getting paid for the war and civilians are catching HE double hockey sticks. Thank you, Miss Sheila. Blessings to all the gods and goddesses, and to you too, Kenneth. Stay dangerous. Thank you. It's almost like Trump is working for America's enemies. Dorian Denard, everything he has done, domestic and foreign, has been detrimental to American citizens. None of us are exempt. He's one of them. If you look at your 401k, you're not going to be happy if you have one. The Iranians do not kill. 330. That's why I said to Mary, thank you. That was Mossad inciting a riot, and 35 people may have died. Yeah, I'm not sure about that, Tamari.
Well, I'll say this: like the Mossad and the CIA, the Mossad being the Israeli intelligence equivalent of CIA, and the CIA have been in Iran for a long time. If you actually watch the TV show, it's an Israeli show that you can watch on Apple TV. It's called Tehran, and the whole premise is about the Mossad operating in Tehran. It's been going on a long time, and it's easier for them to operate in Tehran when there's so many people with the government there. And there's a lot of people who are willing to collaborate with some of these intelligence agencies because they don't want, the majority of Iranians, like I say, probably 80% do not want the Ayatollah and the Revolutionary Guard running the place. I mean, the women have to wear hijabs, a lot of, the head coverings and stuff like that. A lot of people, it used to be, you did have a choice in Iran whether, look, if you're Muslim and you're observant and you feel that's the right way to dress, great. But if you're not, who wants it, forced on you? And there are, groups in Iran, like police who police areas. They see a woman without a hijab or whatever, they'll arrest her.
And the CIA's always been in places like Tehran where there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
The Mossad, and they do it here, right? The Russian government and the Chinese government, and you know, it goes on all over the country, but I appreciate your thoughts on that. That's just what's being reported to Mary. That's why I said, you know, I should have used the word allegedly. I don't know who's killing who over there, right? We hear about China, what's going on in China with the Uyghurs, and we just don't know, right? We're counting on somebody to give us good information, but we don't know if it's good information or not.
Well,
Trump to use this war to stop the midterm elections. Derek Henry, Digital Abonics. Thank you, Kenneth. I can't follow you. I just can't see you. Sorry. I recognize the right to protest, and I will protest in a minute, but some of this performative crap is dead. I'm with you, Queen Bee. Not disagreeing with you.
I'll disagree. I think in this case, I totally get it if people think it's bullshit, but I think when you see millions and millions of people out there, I think it's a message to Trump. It's a reminder that not everybody is approving of what you're doing. The Free Press had a great story today about all these immigrants have been here. One guy has 9 employees. They picked them up. He's got a family and stuff like that. There's got to be a way, where some of these people get grandfathered in, or they go through the right process. Some have been here 20, 25 years. They're not the most violent of the violent, which says what they vowed to do. And Obama deported more people than these guys have without running a shit show and picking up people. They have arrested people who were Hispanic, but who actually had either a green card or were citizens, and they've released them, but with little apology. So,
Ms. Sheila, I'm not sure about the Navy SEAL resigning. I don't know anything about that. Maybe Alan does. What's the end game in the Middle East, Marlon? We all know that Iran's been a problem for 50 years. The solution, this is kind of an extreme solution, whether you agree with it or not. It's a pretty extreme solution.
Yeah.
Resign. They didn't sign up for this. Kenneth Powell, the people in Iran are upset about the conditions due to sanctions the U.S. has put on Iran. Thank you, Tamari. Just like Cuba, right? People are starving in Cuba now. Conflict and not war. So, yeah, Kenneth, it's not a declared war for sure. Thank you, Ms. Sheila, for being a part of the show. Thank you, Kenneth. Tamari. Trump has united the people of Iran after Trump killed a religious leader. To what's ending. I don't have anything else. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Like we said, it's just the two of us. We don't have Teresa. We don't have Adolf. We don't have Vanessa. We have all of you, and we thank you all for your participation. Go ahead.
And tomorrow we have Adolf is not going to be here tomorrow, and I think Vanessa might. Okay. I think she might be virtually. So I think we're probably going to do it virtually just because downtown might be a mess tomorrow. I know there's no King's Day down at Grand Circus Park. There's one at Clark Park in Southwest. I think there's one over on the east side, over on Cadieux, and then all the suburbs, Ferndale, Royal Oak, Troy, and then as far as Ann Arbor, Lansing, and I'm sure Traverse City, and all around the country. So I think it's interesting. I think, some people see protests as a waste of time, but I think Trump gets the message that not everybody's okay with what he's doing. And I don't oppose all the policies, but the execution of the policies is just so, it's over the line so often. That's thank
you, Tamari. Thank you, Janet. We appreciate it. This show is your voice and our voice, and we couldn't do it without you.
And so everyone go out there and get your favorite pizza, whatever that might be. There are, like I said, there's so many great pizza places these days. It's like Buddy's has kind of, really opened a bigger gap by making a lesser product. And I think it's opened up the door for some of these other great places are making great square pizzas, And
it looks like Michigan's running away with the basketball game.
It's so funny.
If you see me turning my head, I'm looking downstairs at the basketball game. So
Michigan,
we'll let the people watch the last 9 minutes of the basketball game.
I'll say one last thing. Michigan, it's funny. They sometimes look lost, like they played Howard, which is not a ranked team.
Right.
they played Howard, and Howard was keeping up with them the first half, and then they killed Howard. And now the same thing. I mean, they were going back and forth. In fact, Alabama was up by 2 points at halftime, and now the Michigan's up by 13 points.
And we love you all too, Miss Sheila. We again thank you all for being there. Enjoy basketball. Thank you for being a part of our show when there's other stuff going on too. And thank you for everybody that gets a chance to watch this at a later time. We appreciate people tuning in.
All right. Okay. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks for tolerating us this evening. Have a good evening. The Tigers on at 9:45. They had an amazing start yesterday. We'll see what they could do. So till tomorrow.